landscape, a symphony, a merry meeting with our friends, a bath, or a football match. He must have liked baths. Have no such tendency. He says, our Father refreshes us on the journey with some pleasant inns, but will not encourage us to mistake them for home. You see what he's saying there? In other words, enjoy the pleasures of this world, but you're not home. And never make that blunder to suppose that you are home yet. In fact, God will not give you the full desire of your heart in this world. He never intended to. Only He can provide that, and that will be a part of the beatific vision when we see Him. The idea, then, is that we are called to pursue Him, but to recognize that we cannot have security in this world. I'm tempted to quote that poem again, The Pulley by George Herbert. But the bottom line, I'm going to spare you that. But the bottom line at the end of the thing is he says that the one thing that the creature will not get is rest. You see. And the reason why he will not get rest is because otherwise he will rest in nature, not the God of natures. And both would losers be. But he goes on to say, let them keep the rest. I'm not going to quote the whole poem, but keep them with pining restlessness. Let them be rich and weary, that if least if goodness lead them not, yet weariness may toss them to my breast. You see what God does? He stoops to conquer. If it turns out that you're going to come to Him because you're weary and you have no rest, it is enough. He will ultimately, His desire, though, is no one comes to Him for perfect motives. But His desire would be, once we do turn to Him, that we would eventually come and learn the wisdom of loving Him for Himself and not for His gifts. Yes?
Would you stand up, please?
Oh, yeah, we're going to...
And speak up loudly, because they can't hear over here.
Can I back up just a minute, because it's bothering me in my spirit a little bit. The whole argument that... Can you hear me?
No, talk about it.
Okay, the whole argument that, if we place our trust in God and we're right, we have everything gained, but it seems to me, isn't that a secondary or third tier argument? Because it almost seems like where Romans says that nature declares God, our conscience, that should be our primary when we're witnessing to others.
Oh, yeah.
Because that almost seems like, well, it almost seems like what the world say, you Christians are weak.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are just, y'all need a crutch, which we've talked about that reasoning. But I almost think that shouldn't be a first tier reasoning with people, because there's other stronger arguments.
Actually, that isn't my first tier, and I use it that way. Thanks for sharing that. It's not.
Yeah, okay.
For example, I do a talk on science, faith, and reason, and I talk about several things, but 4 things that I find that are really pretty powerful is that the evidence that the universe has a beginning, matter, energy, space, and time has a beginning, and it's contingent, therefore it depends upon something that's transcendent. A second thing that science demonstrates is that the universe is exquisitely finely tuned. And the only counter-argument to that is the illusion of multiple universes for which there is no empirical warrant. The third is the origin of the first cell, the idea of life itself, which becomes increasingly absurd the more we learn about what the cell is like. There's not even enough probabilistic resources in the history of the universe to create a simple protein. And then the fourth one is the information in the genetic code that is actually a language, not just a specified complex information. And what I do with something like that is at the end of when I do a little talk like that. By the way, notice on that talk that I give, and I've done this a number of times now with totally secular contexts. I don't even mention evolution. Those 4 arguments we're pre-evolution. You see what I'm doing there? Those 4 nail it, in my view, with science well before that. But then what I will do, having presented this argument and then talked about, and what I'm really doing is appealing to Romans 1. Because Romans 1 teaches us that there is this evidence that God has not left Himself without witness. And in fact, as time goes by, there's greater and greater such evidence. And I think that's very powerful. But then I will also say you cannot be neutral about this. And that's where the other can be a supplement. In other words, to deceive yourself into supposing that agnosticism is a position of neutrality is an illusion. That's where I take this. So I'm claiming with that argument that you can never have the notion that agnosticism is a neutral position. It's not. It is, in fact, to have made a decision. And that's the way I take it. Is that helpful? Somewhat? Okay. I'm not sure if you're all altogether happy about that, but it's my second line of defense. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yes. Stand up, B.
Two things. First of all, can you explain what the Galileans and Pilate were doing with the blood? I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
Secondly, can you explain? You said about people's lives going wrong and all this sort of thing, but isn't there a proverb that said the curse causeless shall not come?
The curse what?
Causeless shall not come.
Yeah, with the Proverbs, what you have there are principles of living, but it's not the claim that everything is going to be a cause and effect. Everything will, but there are basic principles that all things being equal, this righteousness or goodness will lead to a better quality of life than otherwise. But there's no guarantee that you're not going to have any necessary ill, because we see that in Job, we see it in the Proverbs. I mean, we see this as well in the Psalms, and even some of the Proverbs describe how the wicked seem to flourish. But Asaph wrestled with how is it that the wicked flourish and so forth. But your first question was...
Galilean.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Josephus does not record this account, and so we wonder what it was about. A lot of the things that we see are described or authenticated or illustrated by Josephus, the Jewish historian who was worked under the Romans, though. But at any rate, in his... Jewish wars, and in his description of this period of time, he doesn't mention it. All we can assume then is that Pilate, there was apparently some kind of what he perceived to be a threat or an insurrection, and he went up there and he demonstrated his power by even preventing them from sacrificing. But I'm not clear about the detail, because normally the sacrifices would be done in the temple. So was it that the Galileans came to the Jewish temple there in Jerusalem and he then mingled their blood? It's not clear. I wish we knew, but we don't. Yeah.
He disguised his soldiers as Jewish civilians and then pulled out the swords and killed the Galileans.
Is that your theory?
No,
that's what's written?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
That was the evil of it.
Well, tell him that. Where did you hear this?
Pilate was a dark figure, and what he had done was because there was a prospect of insurrection. He had his soldiers dress up as Jewish worshipers, and then when the worshipers got into frenzy that threatened the state, he had them whip out their soldiers and their swords and kill about 24 of them. So it was sort of a dark, evil act on the part of Pilate. Later, Pilate fell into political difficulties and was banished as procurator of Jerusalem.
Now, where did you hear that story? That's a good one. I like it. It makes sense.
There are other historians than Josephus.
I know that. Your job is to find that. Okay. I want him to get me that. I got to check his source. I think he's making it up myself, but it sounds good. I'm just giving you a hard time. You'll find it.
Nothing personal there.
What's that? No. Actually, I like it. I want you to be right. And it makes perfect sense to me that he would be right. So you'll find it.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. Well, we got off target there. But that's good stuff,
That was
though.
human evil.
Yeah, that was wonderful. That's a perfect description of real evil, where he's just dressing them up as Jewish worshipers. I like it.
Did Pilate indeed commit suicide?
There's I'm not aware of any evidence that says that. He was, as David says, though, he stepped down. He was banished from his position of being governor. There's also a thing about the Acts of Pilate. There's this pseudepigraphal work that claims that he came to faith in Jesus, but it's not an authentic work. Anyway. Let me end up with on a positive note here, because
Please.
please, it's got to give you some application here. I think it's easy for us, in the light of all these things, in light of an unjust